Great. So, yeah, I guess, a bit of an obvious one to start with. It's been referenced already. The last 6 months has, been a challenging time for everyone. And it's impacted business in many ways. And I guess, really keen to understand how that has impacted your businesses. Paolo, I've worked with you very closely in the last 6 months, on a number of things. So we can start with you. And just, how has the last 6 months been, and what's the impact been, of COVID on the business?
It's definitely been a strange 6 months. I joined Tails.com in December, so had only a few months of the business before lockdown hit. So it's definitely been a strange few months. I think for us at Tails.com, I feel like we've been quite lucky that the overall impact of COVID, at least on the business, has been positive. I think, and we haven't been disrupted too much by it. We've been able to adapt quite well. I think from a demand side, we definitely saw a spike in our customer acquisition activity, our marketing efficiency improving earlier in the year in the UK as lockdown hit. And I think that while that was positive in some ways, there was also this kind of hoarding mentality from a lot of consumers of trying to get product and have that secure supply of product, which is great, but also I think made us think about how we would market our product. So what messages would we say, what offers would we give, and we also wanted to make sure that we could ensure supply to our existing customer base and focus on making sure we could deliver to those guys as well. So we definitely saw an improvement in customer acquisition. We also saw an improvement in our retention rate. So if we look at our cohorts from the months of heavy lockdown, you can see a clear difference in our retention rate between those cohorts and cohorts from previously. And I think we're seeing that continue as well ongoing. So that to me suggests there's a shift in behavior a little bit in terms of consumers wanting to buy online ongoing, not just in response to the heart of lockdown. On a supply side, things have generally been okay, but being a kind of physical product and digital business, we've had to manage some issues on the supply side, some procurement issues of making sure that we've got things coming in, packaging and some raw ingredients, but also delivering to our customers. So interesting things in France, for example, where Lacoste changed the size of packages that they were willing to deliver during parts of lockdown, and things like that, where we've had to respond and change partners on delivery side. So quite a lot of stuff going on there. From a team point of view, we've all obviously working from home. The factory's still running, but with new processes in place, etc., to ensure everyone's safe. I think the team have adapted extremely well to working from home, and I think there's clearly some benefits of doing that, and some negatives in my mind. I think the jury's still out on what will happen in the far distant land of being able to go back to the office again. But I think that we've all learned to work from home, and I think that I think the productivity has gone up in some areas and probably down in some others, but we've really tried to not let it impact our plans too much. We've launched in 6 new markets since COVID hit. And so we're really just trying to push on with our plans and adjust as best we can. Yeah,
great. And I think, it probably kind of leads quite nicely into the next question. It sounds like there's, within the last 6 months, it's given businesses an opportunity to look, reassess what they're doing, and identify potential opportunities perhaps that will come out of this period. So, Fiona, have you done that as a business? Have you looked and said, where is the next opportunity, using this time frame, using it to kind of reassess and work out what the next steps are?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really what it's done is accelerated that shift as much as not necessarily changed it, but seeing the impact on subscriptions, it's reinforced our reader revenue model, and the decisions we'd already made to make, I think it's helped us to speed those up and focus on it. But I think, like Paolo's saying, there's so much opportunity for businesses, and I think in the subscriptions industries especially, people are becoming more comfortable with remote learning and remote exercise and remote healthcare, and I think the opportunities that come from that are going to be really interesting. I've just signed up for a course in New York that normally would only be open to US residents. Children's education subscriptions are becoming more and more popular. companies like Peloton, seeing their growth in digital subscriptions, have doubled their revenue in a year to 121 million. You know, I think that's showing that there's a massive opportunity for more affordable options and subscription services that people are comfortable with there. And, you know, for us, opening up the world to events like this one, you know, we can do more things that we wouldn't have been able to do in person before. So for us, one of the first big events that we launched back in April, we had over 50,000 people sign up to watch, which, you know, is huge for us. And we had speakers from all over the world and things that we'd never been able to do before. So while it really remains to be a challenging industry, I think it comes with that opportunity. And I also think there's a huge opportunity that we're looking at the moment in the culture shift. So essentially, we're all in the same office now. We're a global team. You know, we've been used to remote working. We've been used to having that flexibility and having global teams on screens for years. But essentially now, all being in the same office, we're all on a level playing field. And I think that gives us a great opportunity to accelerate a more diverse and inclusive workforce, with roles being more accessible and more flexibility around who and how we hire. And that's really important to us. And also we're seeing an increase in more socially conscious consumers. So, you know, this is impacting our marketing campaigns. So, you know, our expectations of companies and company leaders is evolving, and how businesses manage this through the crisis is really important. So one of our most recent campaigns we adapted, we took the headline from an FT article, "Crises Make Reputations," because it really, really matters now how businesses respond to this crisis. There are two camps: those that are treating their customers and their staff and suppliers well, and those who don't. And long term, the opportunity is really there for the ones that do that well and do it authentically, and they're the ones that survive the longest. And we want to be one of those businesses and prioritize looking after our staff, looking after our customers, and making sure that we're doing the right thing through it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, you kind of touch upon, you know, looking after the customer and the way that you treat the customer. And I guess, you know, I've done a lot of reading in the last 6 months around, you know, the nature of my job is to work out or understand which businesses are perhaps doing well and perhaps, you know, maybe aren't, and the way that they're approaching different things. And, you know, kind of, Joanna, if I can come to you, do you feel that having a subscription model has benefited you in the last 6 months because of the nature of the model and the business? Do you think that's helped?
Mm-hmm. I think that, I mean, just because of what's happened with COVID, and given the fact that, you know, I think people have become much more reflective about their relationships, people do feel that sense of isolation. And I think they're looking for things that are more meaningful. So I think even if we hadn't had a subscription service, I think there still would have been a massive uplift in demand. And we've seen that obviously with our competitors, which aren't subscription based. But I think with a subscription model, what it really allows for is there's just less volatility. I think having a model which is based on reoccurring revenue does allow you to kind of ride out the storm when things get a little kind of rough. And I think, for example, with TouchNote, a lot of our customers actually come in a 12-month plan. They all make upfront payments. So basically what that also allows from an acquisition perspective, it allows us to experiment with different strategies from an acquisition point of view. So for example, we offer a free trial as part of our service. I think if we weren't a subscription model, that would definitely not be possible. And in particular, when you're trying to establish almost like a new behavior in the category, where you're trying to establish a behavior which shifts from casual card sending, which might be around occasion based, to something more meaningful, where you are actually, it's all about really meaningful communication with those people that you care for most, and kind of making yourself feel present in their lives, with a form of communication which is less, I guess, disposable in comparison to digital. I think basically having a model whereby you can allow people to experience the product makes a huge difference. And I think just finally on that, I think another kind of benefit to the subscription model is the fact that I think subscription businesses do tend to have a slightly different view of the customer. It tends to kind of make you have a very long-term view of the customer relationship. So rather than kind of thinking, okay, well, how am I going to acquire people through discounting? Really, your entire mindset is around how am I going to add value, you know, to the membership proposition in the longer term. And I think that from a long-term business perspective and business health perspective, I think can be very advantageous.
Yeah, agree. Do you think that's why TouchNote decided to pivot to a subscription business? Because, you know, I guess my next topic or kind of point of discussion was around why are we seeing such a rise in these models? Why the businesses who perhaps traditionally haven't thought about going down this route, you know, have decided to go down this route. So, you know, you obviously work for a business that made that decision. So, yeah, do you think that was why, or were there other reasons behind that? And are there other reasons why businesses are continuing to look at this as a new route to, not a new route to market, but a different way to you know, sell their product or service?
Mm-hmm. I think it's probably a couple of things. I mean, there's always the business point of view for wanting to pivot over into memberships, but then there's the customer point of view. You know, in terms of, you know, from a business perspective, yes, you know, subscription models are generally quite attractive because they, you know, attract a higher LTV, lifetime value. I think it also gives people, you know, brands the ability to reduce switching, you know, amongst competitors, and it makes that more difficult. So there's lots of reasons from a business perspective why that becomes attractive. But I think ultimately it's very much driven by, are we seeing behaviours in the consumer landscape that support a subscription model within that category? I think that if you look at from a consumer point of view, I think subscriptions are on the rise because I think brands are doing a great job at identifying consumer insights and then basically creating a bundle of really outstanding value of things that customers already want. From a TouchNote perspective, you know, it's interesting to kind of note that the average Brit purchases about 33 cars on average a year. We are the country in the world where, you know, nobody else in the world buys as many cars as what Brits do. So the behaviour was already there in terms of that kind of that habitual kind of card buying behaviour. And I think what a subscription service allows TouchNote to do is basically offer our members the absolute lowest prices, exclusive features, but then also a superior product and a superior experience. So, and I think so that just kind of makes sense if you think particularly around COVID times, where you're looking for a product. You still have those needs, but you're looking for a product which is safe, where you don't necessarily have to leave the house, so you don't have to go to the high street or necessarily to the post office to get something done. It's super fast, you feel more connected, it kind of just makes sense. But I think even outside of TouchNote, you know, you kind of look at Pret's subscription model that they launched just recently. I mean, the fact that, you know, you've got £20 per month and you can get up to 5 coffees a day. I mean, you know, that whole thing, whoever's already drinking coffee on a regular basis, it's going to be very attractive. So I think it's about basically creating a bundle of outstanding value and then making sure that you're tapping into a consumer insight.
Yeah, definitely. Paolo, I want to ask you the same question, because I guess, you know, knowing what Tails did, they completely disrupted the market, or traditionally the way that, you know, we as consumers bought, you know, pet food. So, you know, why do you feel that is on the, you know, rise? You know, do you agree with Joanna, or is there anything different that you can add from your experience working in that area?
Yeah, I think I definitely do agree with Joanna. I think if I put my kind of FMCG lens on it, I think there's probably three reasons why people sign up to subscriptions. It can be cost. So there are subscriptions out there where it's just cheaper to buy something on subscription. That part of the proposition is that the cutting out the retailer allows the manufacturer to sell you at a cheaper price. The second one is curation. So something like Birchbox, where they're delivering you products that you wouldn't otherwise have found yourself, and opening your eyes to new products. And I think the third one is personalisation. And for me, this is the one that is the Tails.com business model, and I think is going to become more and more prevalent. And I think we'll see lots more businesses taking on personalisation as a big trend. For for FMCG businesses selling consumer goods, there's often fairly low consideration for these products, and I think that most consumers are not going to replace their weekly shop with 100 different subscriptions. They're not going to just, you know, buy every single part of their weekly grocery shop with a subscription. You know, there is some value in the aggregation of buying things together from a supermarket or from a online retailer where you can get all of those products in one go. Part of the problem with subscriptions is that you have to manage them, right? And that does become a bit of a pain at times. You know, you're going on holiday or your circumstances change or whatever it might be. So I think that the crucial thing is you need to give the right value exchange to the consumer for them to put up with the negatives of subscription and managing that subscription so that overall the net value of that subscription is positive. From a Tails.com point of view, you know, if you go through the sign-up flow on Tails.com, we ask you quite a lot of questions about your dog, and we create a personalised blend for your dog on a one-to-one basis. And if you read our Trustpilot reviews, what you can see is the positive impact on the health, the weight, the energy of the dogs that are feeding Tails.com, and that value that we're creating there is you know, is something that is worthwhile having a subscription for. And then, you know, maybe later in the conversation we talk about kind of where things are going, but you know, for me as well, then it's around creating a service around that. I think there's an increasing pressure from consumers that it's not just the product that they want. The product is actually just a small part of it. It's around creating an experience and a service that consumers want to be part of and enjoy as well. I think that's going to be something that is, you know, businesses are going to have to get right if they want to succeed in this business model.
Yeah. Okay. So Fiona, if I come to you on this, then is there a limit to how many you feel that we as consumers can sign up to at any one time? Because, you know, it all makes sense. You know, you personalize the product or the service to that individual, but surely there has to be a limit on how many you can sign up to, or is that not the case, do you think?
Well, I know that personally I struggle with managing all of my subscriptions, and we know that subscription fatigue is definitely a real thing. You know, it's pretty normal, like Paolo says, to have lots of subscriptions. I've got Amazon Prime, Netflix, Spotify, news, kids education, gym, food delivery. You know, it continues. I don't have a dog, but if I did, I'd definitely be looking at Tails. And after today, I'm going to check out TouchNote. It gets really complicated. But I don't know that, obviously I'm biased, but I don't think the answer is actually to subscribe to less. I think the reason that we subscribe to all these things is because they serve a need. And like Paolo says, they add a value. And because life is hard, life is hectic, life is complicated. So all these things have been developed to make that easier. So instead of choosing one to cancel, I think you need to look at it another way and say, okay, but if the important thing, again, like Paolo said, is that ease of use and responding to that. So I will cancel if I have a bad experience, and I mean user experience and also customer experience. So if it is hard to do something like manage my subscription or pause it when I go on holiday or return something or not get through to someone, or actually if you sneak charges in there that I didn't think were fair, then yeah, I'm going to cancel that. Or if I have a bad experience or I read that you're not treating your staff or your customers right, then I'm going to look for someone else who can do that better. So I think it's really important to make the managing of those subscriptions as easy as possible. In news, we're definitely seeing a move to a winner takes most dynamic, because nobody subscribes to every news channel. So, you know, there are more dominant winners in that. That's something that we're conscious of. But we're also seeing a real flight to quality, and especially in this current climate where people need to read content that they trust. So again, our priority is to make sure that our customers continue to trust us and realize that value in paying for it. And again, echoing Paolo's point, it's that value piece. And I think with managing so many subscriptions, what we are starting to see is that more bundling of products and services into one, because again, people want it to be as easy as possible. So if I can add something to a subscription I already have with a company that I trust and have shown me good service, then I'd much rather add that to something else and start a new one. So I think that is what we will see, more demand for that. So you know, it's part of why Amazon Prime manages to keep its 150 million subscribers. They keep bundling things in that continue to add that value and keep their customers. So I think we'll see more of that, but not less subscriptions.
Okay. So are there obvious challenges then to being subscription, focused, as, someone who's worked in that area for a long time? Do you see challenges by being subscription focused? Does it limit you in some areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to some of those things that we've just discussed, and that you need to continually work hard to innovate, keep up with customer needs, stay current, keep that trust, and respond quickly to a change, which sometimes I think can be hard for legacy businesses like ourselves. We can't move as fast as we want to sometimes. And I think keeping up with the competition is a huge challenge, because it's often not who you think it is, and sometimes it comes from nowhere. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, famously said their biggest competitor is sleep. And he also says that Netflix actually loses more people to Fortnite than they do HBO. So it's not those direct competitors. So for us, yes, our obvious competition is the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but it's also time, social media, work, all those other distractions that people have because they don't have time to read everything. They don't have time to manage everything. They don't have time to keep up with all of that. So that need to continue to keep up with the competition, respond to customer needs, and adapt to the formats. Beyond the printed word, getting our video and audio proposition right is really important, so that we're always in spaces that our customers need and expect us to be. So I think that's definitely a challenge. Okay.
You talk about innovation, and I guess that's key to businesses continuing to be successful. So Paolo, for subscription models, where is the innovation? What's next in this area?
Yeah, I think some of the things that Fiona just said. I think bundling is definitely part of this, and that's not a new phenomenon, right? Like TV plus phone plus mobile phone plus internet, etc. Like bundling is not a new phenomenon, but I think we might see that potentially across categories and other ways of bundling products together, so that you don't have to manage so many things individually, and you can create that value by giving a really good value for money in terms of what you're getting. I think I mentioned this earlier, moving to kind of a service-focused model, which links to what Joanna said around kind of taking a longer-term view of the customer and not just trying to get the here and now, but taking the view across time. I do think customers are expecting more than just the product. They're not just expecting the thing that arrives in the post. They're expecting a service that wrapper around that as well, and that goes from all parts. Customer service is a huge part of that. The way that you interact with the brand, whether that be through social media, through email, through phone, and I think that is going to be a really big part of this. And there's two places that I think that is manifesting itself. One potentially is access over ownership. So you kind of see that with music already, but there's loads of examples where I think that's going to become more. There'll be more of those models. I think one example is Drover, which I don't know if you know that business, but they being able to subscribe to a car that has its insurance and maintenance and everything else included. For lots of consumers, there'll be a huge value in the flexibility, the convenience, not having to worry about it, even though probably it will cost more. I would guess, I haven't done the math, but it will cost more in terms of the monthly cost. The fact that you don't have to deal with it is going to be important. I think that business can be very successful if it gets that service piece right there. But you could imagine a situation where if any of that chain breaks down, then it just won't work, and the customer will be sufficiently annoyed that they wouldn't want to continue. So I think that kind of access over ownership, I think, will be a continued trend. The second one is, as I talked about, is personalisation, and I think that particularly in the world of FMCG, it's starting. The thing holding personalisation back was supply chain. How do you make a product that is personalised to an individual? But we're starting to see businesses like Tails.com and others being able to do that. Personalization from other businesses like a Spotify, for example, or Netflix, that big data algorithms, etc., being able to offer up content. But I think personalization in the FMCG world will continue to be a trend on direct to consumer subscription. And you think about businesses like Function of Beauty and hair care. You think about new business Skin and Me in skincare. There's lots of these starting to come up as supply chains are able to deliver personalization effectively. So I think that will continue to be a trend.
Yeah, personalization seems to be, something that, comes up whenever you read about subscription models and why they work. And I was reading something on Marketing Week earlier in the week from CMO at Gusto, and he was talking about the data and the use of data to be, empathetic, to its customers. So yeah, a kind of question for you all. Start with you, Joanna. But yeah, is personalization the key to success within subscriptions?
It's definitely something that's very important. Our product is inherently personal. Obviously, it basically requires you to add, personal photos, messages, etc. So it's fully customizable and personal. So I think we're lucky in that sense, and I think increasingly we're bringing in more data to make sure that the way that we communicate with our members through either email push is as personalized as possible, as well as even the challenges that we set them to basically stimulate usage. I think when you do have a membership service, there is an expectation by the customer that you are going to know who they are and that the experience is personalized. That said, I think in addition to personalization, I think the success of a subscription business is very much dependent on effectively activating customers fairly early on. I mean, I think that that's absolutely key. You have to really make sure that the customer understands your product from the get-go and is basically being prompted into a pattern of usage that actually basically is habit forming. If you do not manage to get activation right, well, then you're always going to kind of be trying to, catch your, kind of catch your tail. And I think, utilization rates are going to suffer, and then eventually you're going to have a bunch of cancelled memberships that you're going to have to resurrect, which you want to try and avoid. So I think activation is absolutely key. And I think for that, as marketers, what we need to start thinking about is, how do we partner up with product to get that activation job done? Because I think, in previous world, marketing and product kind of work quite independently. And I think that there's definitely a need to kind of come together, in particular for subscription services.
Great, thank you. Fiona?
Yeah, I would echo that really. I think it's the engagement part for us that's really the key to success, and that personalization part. I don't think everything needs to be 100% personalized, and for us we need to balance that because people subscribe to the FT because they want to know what the FT's view is and what they should read, and that serendipitous pieces of what the editor and the journalists are suggesting they need. But I think it all needs to be really relevant and it needs to be easy. So a few years ago we also reached the point where our acquisitions were strong, but we needed to focus on engagement and retention. So personalization is a big piece of that. But to make it work, we had to invest in the data behind it, focus on understanding the signals we get from our customers to build that informed algorithmic journeys to make personalized recommendations for us that are, most read, personalized newsletters and things like that. So the data behind it is serving relevant, but not missing out some of the other content that people also kind of don't know what they don't know and don't know what they don't want. So we try and balance both, but I think what it also does is help to filter choice and decisions that customer needs to make. So we try and take away the irrelevant options and make the decisions for them to look at easier, and kind of, as Joanna says, guide them through the activation piece and say, this is what you should sign up to, this is what you should be doing to build that habit, and then give them the faith that you can bring them the value that they need.
Okay. So, given your role, then how do you go about that? What's the split from a marketing perspective around, getting that right and making sure that mix is right? And I guess, with digital, being, increasingly used to, particularly in modern world, how important is that channel, in order to tap into this kind of personalization, for your customers?
Yeah, it's been, absolutely fundamental to making that work. We shifted our focus to digital channels way back when we shifted our focus to digital subscriptions. So it's been a gradual evolution and a shift for us, but tying up the relationship, as Joanna says, between product and marketing, and making sure that we've got those customer journeys right and in sync, offsite as well as on-site, making sure we've got all the data behind it and we're measuring what works, is what we've been investing in. We've just built out our marketing mix modeling so that we can better inform some of those decisions on where we invest, and we're currently investing in the right marketing automation tools to make sure that we're kind of aligning those customer journeys and driving that engagement and being where the customers are.
Great. Okay. Paolo, I know Tails do some of the more maybe traditional, marketing, channels in terms of, getting customers. What place is there for these channels in today's, digital world? Because you're an online business to subscribe, but yet you use, offline channels to drive acquisition of customers. So do you think that's important for subscription businesses to have both?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think so. I think the rise of the kind of direct-to-consumer subscription business 5-10 years ago, there was this kind of gold rush moment of Facebook and Google advertising being relatively cheap, relatively easy to get on board with. You could you could grow a business pretty rapidly and pretty cost effectively in those channels. I think over time, obviously, that's become harder. There's been way more advertisers looking for those eyeballs. With the rise of things like Shopify and others, it's relatively easy now to set up a direct consumer business and start advertising and selling things. And so, I've definitely seen that those channels have become harder. The cost of those channels is going up. The click-through rates and engagement is going down as more advertisers are there. So they're still obviously very, very important, and they have lots of advantages in terms of their flexibility and low cost in terms of the amount you have to outlay in one go. But being able to have a broad marketing mix, I think, is really important. I think not all consumers will engage with social media, so you're missing out on a chunk of consumers without being on these other channels. I think that in general, those digital channels are often quite good for bottom of the funnel activity, so converting people to purchase it right at that moment. They're less good for building consideration in general, and so some of the more traditional channels are much better for building that consideration, and particularly as a business evolves and matures, you need to have that full funnel mix, not just the bottom of the funnel conversion activity. And then I think as well that it's important to have flexibility about where you can put your marketing pounds and dollars, because if you're over invested in one channel, if something changes in that channel for whatever reason, your competitors start bidding more aggressively, Google changes their algorithm, whatever it might be, you can suddenly find yourself with real problems if you don't have that mix. And so my view is always having a broad marketing mix is better, so that you can move money between channels as the opportunities or risks arise. I think the difficulty with these more traditional channels, the TVs and the prints, is that you do often need to pay a lot more upfront. So you have to develop creative. The minimum buys are often bigger, and so particularly for smaller businesses, that is very difficult, and it's a big risk to go into that straight away. So I do think there's an evolution of the marketing mix for a business over time. I think the crucial thing is that I would guess most businesses start with digital, getting the learnings on things like creative, on things like offer, on things like who your core audience are from some of that digital activity, and applying that to the more traditional channels, I think is crucial to giving yourself the best chance of success in when you are ready to make those bigger bets on those offline channels, that you give yourself the best chance of success there.
And Joanna, how do you measure success then from a marketing point of view? How do you measure what has been successful and what's perhaps not?
Mm-hmm. First of all, I want to say that I completely agree with what's been said by the panelists with regards to our marketing mix. I'm a huge believer in being channel agnostic and just basically going where your audience is. So in terms of marketing effectiveness, I mean, we're all about sustainable growth at TouchNote. So it basically means that we apply a fairly strict spend ratio to all of our marketing spend. That can make things challenging. It means that you've got to get quite creative and experimental. But attribution for us is key. And I think being a mobile app first business, it actually is also always a challenge. We rely on making sure that we work with, great partners, etc., to look at CPAs by channel. But I think, going a little bit deeper than that, I think we also look at, we make sure we look at LTV, not only by channel, by platform, by geography. We revise our targets very often. Our marketing approach is very agile. I think one of the benefits of having a media mix, which is a combination of something that's more traditional and also digital, is that you do have levers that you can kind of pull very, very quickly depending on how things are tracking for the month. With regards to TV, in terms of effectiveness, we use attribution platforms for television. We do a lot of uplift studies. We do lots of control tests for anything that's that's more traditional and less directly attributable through digital channels. So yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to pop onto some of the questions that we've received from some of the audience. One here is around the idea of creating a community as part of a subscription model. So I think, Fiona, you mentioned Peloton, so maybe I'll come to you on this one. So, use them as an example. They do a huge amount on social media to drive, a feeling of community and really embedding that into the lifestyle. So do you feel that the panelists, do you feel as panelists, sorry, that that's important? And are there any brands that you feel that are doing that, that particularly well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this this new world that we're living in just drives that even more, the fact that people, and things are more accessible and people can be part of a community more easily than they could be before. That's something that we've just prioritized as a business ourselves, making sure that our events businesses are all lining up with a subscription one to see how we can add that value and introduce people. And I think especially given what people have been going through over the last 6 months, that need to interact with other people and learn from other people that we haven't been able to get while we're all sitting at home in our rooms by ourselves. I think that any way that brands can help connect people is going to be really, really important.
Great. Yeah, definitely agree. At the moment, that is, it's really important. I like this one. It's around flexibility in, a customer's ability to manage their subscription product. So pause for a month, upgrade, downgrade, add-on, bolt-ons, how visible, I guess, you make cancellation. Paola, I believe, I'm not a customer. I don't have a dog yet. I believe you're quite honest about your kind of policy around this. So are you able to answer that one for us?
Yeah, I think back in the early days of subscription models, I think the default was hide the cancel button in page 1000 of the website and really try to just make it extremely difficult, add a phone number that is on hold for 6 hours, etc. I think that may have been good for the short term, but if someone wants to cancel, even if you can save them, unless you make a fundamental difference to the way they see the value of your subscription, i.e. you change something for them or you help them to understand more about your offering, they're going to cancel anyway. You can give discounts, you can make changes and things like that, but I think you're really just delaying the cancel probably rather than stopping it in most cases. So what is important, I think, is that a lot of the time the cancellation reason might be because of circumstances that aren't to do with your brand or your product. So it may be that somebody in these times has lost their job or has moved house or whatever it might be. And so from thinking again about this long-term view of the customer, for me, making it easy for people to do these things is absolutely crucial. It means that they're more likely to come back. It means that they're more likely to tell their friends a positive story about your brand. I don't think you gain very much by making these things difficult. So I think that we've moved to a world where that usability and that customer friendliness is trumping the kind of the short-term gains of hiding the cancel button somewhere deep in the website.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's about being transparent, isn't it? And honest with your customers. And yeah, if it's not right for them right now, that doesn't mean it won't be right for them again in the future. You know, it's, you know, individual circumstances. Okay. Joanna, this one specifically aimed at something I think you mentioned around, you know, discounts can be valuable in some cases, but from this person's own experience in TV subscriptions, they have also said that it can discourage repeat subscribers. So at what point do you think that, you know, do you move on from that tactic, or do you always believe that there is a sweet spot to kind of find with that approach around discount?
We actually don't do a lot of discounting. It's not something that we've done. I think for us, it's much more important to get people to be able to trial the service and actually experience the service. And then, quite frankly, you know, it's not a discounted payment as such, rather than kind of discounting things up front. I think it probably is quite industry specific. It really, I mean, I think it's going to be industry specific, you know, how much competition is in the industry, what your competitors are doing, and how you kind of have to compete. But what I would kind of suggest is really experimentation tends to kind of flush out the best approach. We've done loads of experimentations from an acquisition perspective to basically see, should it be, you know, for example, a free trial? Should it be a trial with a nominal fee? To basically make sure that people are actually kind of engaged. We've done lots of experimentation, and I think that that's really the best way to kind of get to that answer.
Okay, great, thank you. Time for maybe a couple more. One from the most recent one. So in freemium business models, what's a good benchmark ratio of paid for free customers? Does anyone want to take that one? No.
I think it depends on the industry. I don't know that it's like so sector specific, and I think it's probably looking at, you want to look at the conversion rate, and like Joanna says, do some testing around it to see what works for you. We've done a lot of testing around and things like that, and continually changing our access model. And I think it's that bit of, even what works right now might not be what works in a year's time. So it's that being adaptable and checking it, rather than having a set ratio or a set number that you think will be the right thing and always work. I think it's the adaptability you need to figure out for what works for you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, last question for you all, because I know that a couple of you have got a hard stop at 1:30, and it came in from someone who's anonymous. But yeah, I thought it was a good way to end the discussion. Is what you feel is missing from, you know, what industry or category do you feel is missing from having a subscription model at the moment, or have we now got it all? Can we now subscribe to everything? Fiona, do you want to go?
I mean, I can't think of many things that you can't subscribe to now.
No.
So I don't know. I think what is missing is the experience. So yeah, you can subscribe to everything, but who's actually got the right product and investing in some of that. I mean, just because it's on my head this morning trying to have 2 kids at home and deal with working and having them at home, but there's so much out there you can subscribe to for children now, but none of them are worth the money, I think, yet, but there's huge potential in that. So I think if I was going to invest in anything, I think it would be healthcare or education in that respect. It's got a lot of potential. Okay. Joanna?
Yeah, I probably agree with Fiona. It kind of feels like there's a subscription for everything these days. I think what I'm kind of interested in seeing is, you know, I think some of the panelists kind of mentioned this already around kind of creating these ecosystems of kind of bundled products, but I'm also interested to see where things are going to go in terms of hybrids. So where you basically have a subscription service, but then you can kind of, you know, buy add-ons, etc. I mean, Amazon does that really well. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how that starts to, I guess get taken up by the various other industries that are, you know, running subscription services at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Paolo, anything you thought of?
Yeah, I'm not a specific industry or category, but I think as things evolve in, I guess, the FMCG world more from a subscription point of view, things at the moment that sometimes it's either the supply chain or cost that means it's prohibitive to build a model that's successful. So there will inevitably be continued improvements in things like delivery, and that may open up opportunities to have models for subscription that don't currently exist, either because speed of delivery or cost of delivery. And I think that we're starting to see in some cases, personalization through supply chain, but I don't think that's true across every category. I think as supply chains evolve and that can become easier in more categories, I think it's inevitable that those categories will move to more of a personalized model, which would link to a subscription really well.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, sorry I couldn't get around to answering everyone's questions. Really appreciate everyone commenting. Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Paolo, for your time today. I thought it was really insightful. Yeah, really useful to just try and understand, why this trend is, continuing to, kind of take over our lives. So, yeah, I will leave you all to your afternoons. I'm about to go and get my third free coffee of the day from Prep. So, yeah, I'll go and use that subscription. Yeah, definitely. And then maybe try and find something else to subscribe to. Peloton sounds like the next one for me. So yeah, thank you all so much. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks,
And,
Michael.
have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Thank you so much. Bye.